A large crowd of Nigerians defy COVID-19 safety protocols at the headquarters of the National Identity Management Commission as they rush to beat the deadline for the registration of their identification numbers. The scene can best be described as survival of the fittest. Some who cannot stand the struggle watch from the sides. This prospective enrollee vents his frustration at the process.
This card today to be here this morning, on 12 January, I've been here. Up to this moment, so many people are here, they don't even have access to enter into the premises. People are here, as I'm talking to you now, I'm about going back to my house because I have to leave my office, abandon my work schedule to be here, to be captured, only for them to be selecting people they know. It's very, very unfortunate in this country.
At what time have you been here? Since what time?
I've been here since 6 a.m. They asked me to come here on 12 January. You can see this slip. It's written 12 January.
When did you collect this paper?
I collected this slip on 22nd December last year.
This lady, however, has a different view.
The staff here, they are trying their best. Look at all the police officers. But they are maintaining their self. Do you understand? Not to be hooligans with us. Yet, the crowd, the people, they refuse to adhere to the orders of the staff. Okay, form a simple line. You will be entering according to the line. Nobody wants to do that.
We'll go inside though.
Finally, the gate is opened for all.
Yes, and the gate.
The scene in here is calm. Many are optimistic that the federal government would meet the demands of the workers to avoid a setback in the registration exercise.
Well, good morning and welcome. Sunrise Daily. I'm Ayo Makinde. Okay.
Well, we're in Abuja, the nation's capital, where you just saw that report from. Good morning, Amaokwe Ogun-Yusuf.
Well, maybe we should actually begin with you. Since you are in Abuja and that happened in Abuja, I mean, what's your take, first of all?
Ayo, we can start from anywhere. We can start from anywhere. At least Abuja has given its report. You know, you can see just what the situation is in Abuja. And I think that we owe this country a duty to stay on the issue, to stay on the matter, because we've highlighted this. We've brought it up as a matter of, well, I don't know, as a matter that doesn't show that we are thinking about the safety of our people. So on the one hand, yes, we are thinking about the security of our people. We're saying, you know, it is important for us to be able to link. This conversation has been going on for a while in terms of ensuring that people have their national identity cards, and it's not just in one silo, but we're able to link all of the identities that we have. I mean, it separates data systems of, you know, of the agencies that have to manage them. Your driver's license, your international passport, your national ID card, your voter's card, you know, all the cards that you need in the country to continue to exercise your civic duties, and also that identifies you as a Nigerian. So, you know, we have always highlighted the fact that it is very important that all of this information about an individual, a Nigerian, is linked in such a way that if you enter a number, the NIN number, all the details about that Nigerian should pop up. Sadly, it's not been the case, and we have seen how that has affected us adversely when we talk about security. But right now, we're also talking about safety and the health of our populace in the middle of a pandemic. After we talked about this matter for a very long time, the Minister of Science and is it communication now? I'm trying to remember what the name of the ministry, digital communication, Dr. Issa Pantami eventually came out to say, look, this directive was given since February 2020. And a lot of people don't remember that directive ever being given in February 2020. And they even argue that even if it was given in February 2020, you know, there was a pandemic and there was a lockdown in March. You know, when eventually we decided to resuscitate the order in terms of Nigerians linking their phones with their national identification numbers, shouldn't we have given them time? But background information, because I had to make some phone calls and find out what exactly was going on, said that the telecom companies have been the ones that have defaulted. They have treated the order with disdain, almost with contempt, so to speak, and they haven't done what they ought to do. And that's the reason why we now have these short deadlines to put them under pressure. Sadly, it is not the telcos that are going through the hassle and the stress that we're seeing right now. It is the Identity Management Commission, NIMC, and Nigerians that are going through the stress, through the hassles. They're the ones who are suffering it. We saw only recently NIMC down tools say that their members had contracted COVID-19, and you've seen the chaos at the registration centers. This is coming all on the heels of a second wave. Yes, we saw a going down of figures, but in recent times, we've seen figures spike. And so we're asking government, what are you going to do about this? We posed the question to the Minister of State for Health, who was on our show just 2 days ago. You heard what he said. I think at the minimum, he said that what he understood was that there could be a suspension so that there could be a reset, which for me makes a lot of sense. If we have given an order and we've seen the chaos it is generating and I don't want to use the word madness, but this is madness. We cannot be telling Nigerians to social distance, adhere to safety protocols, and, on the one hand, and on the other hand, create situations where we know that there isn't enough trust for government and its officials, for them to be orderly. Because one of the reasons why people will misbehave like this is because they think that, oh, if I don't do this, some other person is going to get in my front, or some other person is going to cheat me. And that's the reason why, the people behave in such an irrational manner. What do we then do when we know that this is now the situation facing a lot of people? How do we then ensure that, our people are able to get their needs in good time, because we're talking about security, and link it with their SIM cards in such a way that they don't harm themselves and they don't put our health facilities under undue pressure and duress? I think that's the question we've been trying to answer in the last couple of weeks. And so far, so good. The response that we have gotten from the authorities have been unsatisfactory. If this is what we're still seeing, how many days after raising this issue? Ayo, I think that a lot more needs to be done, unless, of course, you're getting a different picture in Lagos. Is it different where you are?
I wish it were as different as a number of people would wish, because if you look at this that is happening in Abuja, you can be sure that it will be a notch higher in Lagos if we were to take such a report, because you have seen, how it has been every time we have brought this case up in Lagos. Whenever Chris went to the NIMC Center at Alausa in Ikeja, it's exactly the same picture that you see, sometimes even worse. And it was the first place that we brought you that information where people actually got to find out that there are other services that the people have to pay for. So even now, it's quite a potpourri of functions, if we can put it that way, because there are those who want to make corrections, which are services that they have to pay for between 5,000 and 30,000 naira, as the information that was given, according to the information that we have had. And then there are those who are looking to get their NINs for the very first time ever. And it's even more cumbersome now, Malkwe, because any federal agency you go to now, it's a precondition. You have to show your NIN, or you have to indicate that without that NIN, on the way, or even though the FRSA has said that it's until the second quarter. The truth of the matter is, as at 2 weeks ago, if you open the website of FRSC to get anything done, the first thing you see is that if you do not have your NIN, you can't even renew your driver license. How much more if you want to get a driver license at all? And now that is for road safety. It's going to be the same thing if you want to open a bank account. It's going to be the same thing if you want to get your passport or renew your passport. Virtually anything you want to do with any government agency, federal or state, ministry, department, or agency, you have to show your NIN. And that challenge is just right there. But then that is one. Do you know, by the way, that this whole idea of getting a national ID card, ID number, started in 1977? And I never really saw the light of day until 2003 when this whole conversation began again. And then we had to move NIMSI from under the Ministry of Internal Affairs to the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy. And this is where we are now. Where to next? Which is why it's all so confusing now for a good number of people. Right now, we are about to open schools. Oyo State government is saying if you don't abide by protocols, we're going to have to shut down that school. The NMA is also advising, let's not open schools yet because not many are abiding by this protocol. Where do we go from here? I guess government, you have your work cut out for you because this idea, this suggestion needs to be reiterated again by the NMA president.
We predicted that the second wave will come and we should be ready. Now the simple non-pharmaceutical components of the response by Nigerians where we should take ownership has completely failed. People are not using face masks. People are not using hand sanitizers. And the issue of social distancing has completely collapsed. Okay, why should we be talking about national identity card now, where people are clinging and climbing over one another? What is urgent in getting national identity card? I did my own I filled my form in 2015. Up to today, I don't have an identity card, national identity card. So what is the urgency? And I believe the Nigerian Medical Association believe very strongly that there is no urgency for the national identity number that they are asking for. It can be suspended until we are able to appropriately respond to the COVID pandemic.
Well, it's the same thing you also hear or see on the front pages of a good number of the newspapers this morning. We begin with the Vanguard newspaper that says we're working on type, quantity of COVID-19 vaccines. That's according to the federal government. See the story on page 6 this morning. How African countries are preparing for vaccine rollout. You find more on that. Owners of dormant accounts, unclaimed dividends have nothing to fear. Really? Well, the story is on the inside pages. Debt service gulps 3.3 trillion naira. That's quite a chunk from the national budget. 4.691 trillion naira lost to tax waivers. Okay, so yesterday we were told from the front page of another newspaper that we have lost 5.4 trillion naira to tax evasion. Now we have lost 4.691 trillion naira to tax waivers. How much have we lost to tax eviction or tax avoidance? Well, the story is on the inside pages. No more fuel subsidy. All of that you'll find on the inside pages. FJ will back research on using river blindness drug to treat COVID-19. That story is on page 15. Find out the details on the inside pages. And right under the picture you see there, nation's challenges, no more excuses, Lawan tells leaders. Find that story on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. On the back page, you have sports. It's quite a lot to pick from. You can just choose your pick. That's the Vanguard newspaper today. Mark.
Well, let's look at blueprints. They're also following, along that headline, COVID-19 spike, anxiety over schools resumption. FUNAB, Bauchi government stick to January 18. Obiano postpones reopening. Ekiti Varsity, Uniloring resume online. ABU now January 25. Airborne to deploy 2 nurses per school. Nigerian experts brief Oshibajo on potential drug. It's on page 6 of the paper. So they're following up on this COVID-19 spike and the fallouts of what could happen. I think a lot of parents are wondering to pay school fees or not to pay school fees. Because some parents are saying, if it's online school, I don't know if I want to do this again. But if that's how we'll have to educate our children for now, and that's what we'll have to do. 2023, INEC to review, introduce new technologies, moves to improve polls outcome. And now it's a good time to start. Demons of PIB will be defeated in 2021. I like the sound of that. That's according to the Senate President. Lawan says Nigeria earns $2 billion from deep offshore sharing contracts. It's on page 5 of the paper. Demons of PIB. Sometimes you have to say yes. There have to be demons behind the stopping the passage of the PIB, so to speak. We spent 3.27 trillion naira on debt servicing in 2020. That's according to the federal government. A number of other stories are there, but we'll leave you to do that yourself. Let's leave it there for Blueprint Newspapers.
The Nigerian Tribune begins also with the story on the race for vaccines. Nigerian scientists brief FG on possible COVID-19 drug. Highlight extent of research on river blindness drug. Submits research report to WHO and NAFDAC. Osinbajo excited. Pledges FG's support. That story is on page 8 of the paper. Right under the picture you see there is how Nigerians trade their national identity numbers. They're just deceiving themselves, NIMC official says. NIN generated with BVN must be updated at enrollment centers. That's according to NIMC, the story you'll find on page 28 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning, and so many others to pick from. The back page, of course, has sports. Markwe.
Has this one. Planned violence, security operatives on red alert against plotters. Recall that just about 2 days ago, the DSS had come out to say that there were plots to incite religious violence in the country. But you see, the leadership is following up on that story now, saying planned violence, security operatives on red alert against plotters. Northern governors ask security agencies to redouble efforts. We're working with sister agencies to quell threats, that's according to the DSS. Let's take warning seriously, CSOs tell Nigerians. Southeast governors mull regional security outfit. OPC alleges plan to weaken Amotekun. That's also there on the front page. COVID-19, NMA demands establishment of oxygen centers. We thought that was already, well, if NMA is saying it, then it means that maybe somebody somewhere is not telling the truth. INEX introduced new technologies ahead of 2023. That is looking inevitable. And looking at the bottom there, they also have the story, debt service engulfed 3.27 trillion naira in 2020 budget. That's according to the federal government. Note, it's not repayment of debt. Servicing alone, 3.27 trillion naira. And we're taking on more debt. Well, I guess we have to find ways to make money. Earmarks 1.2 trillion naira for security in 2021. That's where we are. That story is on page 4 of the paper. We'll leave it there for leadership newspapers.
Very troubling figures you've just reeled out there, Malpa, if anyone would say. The Guardian newspaper is talking business, awaiting CBN's foreign exchange rate unification. Well, there's been a lot of talk about that one, about different rates for different functions or different categories of people. Normalized rates to boost transactions, says LCCI boss. Rouhani warns against exchange rate fixing. Political consideration, intrigues, thwart Apex Bank's efforts. That's what you have on the lead of, as the lead of the Guardian newspaper continues on page 2. Persistent suit raises cancer scare in South-South. Related studies show prevalence of lung and skin cancers higher in Port Harcourt than Ibadan. Well, that is something that should give us cause for concern. Let's give attention to that. And now this one, that red line under the picture that you see there. Cholera kills 10 in Benue, many hospitalized. That story is on page 5. Certainly something we should give attention to, even though we have a pandemic right before us. That's the Guardian this morning.
Daily Trust has this one. Despite COVID-19 emergencies, how it starts, federal government budgets 5.8 billion naira for vaccine institutes. Why we can't develop vaccine, that's according to experts. Lebanon, Iraq, others making efforts. 103 million Nigerians to get free jab. That's according to an official. I don't know. I saw a story like this, yesterday. Something about how Nigeria used to produce vaccines in the 1960s, even up until the 90s. But sadly, because technology moved, we never moved to new technology and we did not invest, and seems to be where we are. But you want to get details as to what this budget, 5.8 billion naira, is going to be. What kind of institutes are we thinking about? Is it just for COVID-19? Is it going to be worth the investment? That story, I think, is an interesting one on page 4 of the Daily Trust. Fresh crisis as varsity workers begin indefinite strike on Thursday. That is also there. North not afraid of restructuring. Find out who's speaking on page 3. And you also see at the bottom there, soldier sentenced to death for killing superior in Borno. It's on page 3 of the paper. There was a court-martial in Borno yesterday, a military court-martial, and these are some of the verdicts that came out of that court-martial. That's where we leave it for Daily Trust newspapers.
The Daily Times is also talking about vaccines this morning. FG unfolds vaccines, fuel subsidy strategies, and others. Stories on page 2 of the paper today. 2023 elections, INEC to review, introduce new technologies in 2023 elections. Ohaneze Ndigbo. Atiku urges Obiozor to sustain Ohaneze's cooperation with other ethnic groups. And Climate Change Fund, Guterres renews call for $100 billion climate change relief from developed nations. Take your pardon. Editorial, beg your pardon. Editorial is on which way for police reforms. More of that on the inside pages of the Daily Times newspaper today. And the Nigerian News Direct. APC membership registration. Governors Bello and Abiodun head committee vow to triple membership base. That's the lead of the Nigerian News Direct this morning. And you want to find out the details on the inside pages. And there's something interesting right above the nameplate of the Nigerian News Direct today. Nigerian hospital deploys maggots healing power. Yeah, you heard that right. The story is on page 3 of the Nigerian News Direct this morning. You may want to check out the details and so many other things on the inside pages. And the Daily Independent is also there on the front page this morning. Forces in outside Nigeria frustrating PIB, as ascribed to the President of the Senate. Says investors threatened living over PFC's amendment and vows National Assembly will tackle PIB this year. That has to be well. You saw another newspaper reference that differently earlier. Buhari plotting to bar some politicians, ascribed to Junaid Mohammed. The details begin on the front page of the Daily Independent this morning. And that's it for the papers today. We're back in a moment to take on the issues for the day. Just stay with us.
And we're on day 2 of a protest by SANU, a joint protest by SANU and NASU, which are to highlight their grievances over, well, I'm sure they would enumerate what the grievances are in a moment. But these issues just seem unending in Nigeria's tertiary education sector. Just yesterday, we had a conversation with the president of ASU and also NASU as well. And I did recollect the comrade from SANU saying, look, we have a moral burden to ensure that our students go back to school. We're going to be asking our guest this morning if he shares that view of his colleague. We have with us this morning Comrade Mohammed Ibrahim, who is a national president, Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Universities. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you very much.
Shall we say a happy new year? Is this year going to be a happy one for our students who are looking forward to returning to school?
Yeah, I think we have no reason to doubt that the year will be good, even though maybe with some challenges. We in SANU are progressive by nature. and anything that will retard any development, we don't associate ourselves with it, except when we have no other choice. And probably that is why we have a different strategy of driving home our points. At every opportunity we have, we try to do more of engagements and ensuring that our homes are put, our points are put to the right channel. And you also have mentioned that the university system probably is likely to face some challenges. Yes, we do. We are facing some challenges because government, for us, is not really serious about improving the education sector of Nigeria.
So for some people, they'll say when government addresses ASU's demands, they know invariably very soon they're going to see SANU or NASU's demands as well. Is it some sort of rivalry? Because snippets of what we're getting now says that this is about a 40 billion naira, which the federal government plans to release to the university system, but which ASU is going to be getting which is the academic staff union now, the teaching staff, will be getting 75% of that, and you think that that is unjust. Is that correct?
Well, let me just put the record straight. We have no reason to, be rivals to ASU. We are partners in progress. They are our colleagues who are doing a different job from ours. The university cannot exist without ASU. It also cannot exist without SANU and NASU and NAT, because we play complementary roles. So it is not about rivalry. We have no reason to, antagonize anyone's, ambition or work. If you are talking about 40 billion, well, probably we are. The question is coming at the wrong time, because government, before this 40 billion, had promised SANU and the other non-teaching staff unions 30 billion naira. And for your information, this is about the fourth tranche. It's not even the first, nor is it the second. Government had paid this money in different tranches, probably because it didn't have the enough resources or quantum of resources that is required to offset this backlog of arrears. We are talking about arrears of and allowances, which is captured.
That is for ASU or for SANU?
For all the university, four university-based unions. Okay. We have 4 unions in the university, okay. ASU, NASU, SANU, and NAT. And government did enter an agreement with the 4 unions and, completed and signed those agreements in 2009. Precisely, ours was in November 2009. And if you look at the agreement, one of it is the payment of and allowances. And government was not under duress when it signed that agreement. And for us, the allowances are specific for some members of staff who do specific jobs. None of the allowances cut across except probably hazard allowance. So I don't know what is the hard and fast rule about some people looking at it as if we are just taking a largesse, for our membership. We deserve these allowances, and that is why probably government is convinced that we deserve it, and they approved it, and we signed an agreement, and that such monies were going to be paid, and that such monies were paid before. Our contention now is that the modus operandi of sharing the money, if you had promised us 30 billion and you never gave it, and then another sister union came, they fought for their own also, and probably you saw the need to pay the monies because of the pressure. And then you are giving 40 billion, and it was made explicitly clear by the Minister of Labour that we are giving this 40 billion for the 4 university-based unions. He never mentioned any formula. And that was why yesterday I was taken aback when we heard that government had even released the money and that it confirmed that it was 75-25. And I had to describe it as evil, because if you had 4 unions and then you are giving one union 30 billion, and then giving 3 unions 10 billion naira, how best can you describe this? So we have no problem with ASU. Government can give them 100 billion if they deserve it, but we also have our money. So if you want, give ASU their money, give SANU, NASU, and NAT our own money separately from ASU. But if government is trying to put our heads together on a collusion course, that is where it happens. That is where it happens like this, giving 40 billion and sharing it, in a skewed formula that puts people, at a collusion course.
You say that you're not being antagonistic towards the sister union, ASU, but some people will beg to disagree. Over the years, we have seen just how relationships have not exactly been on best of terms. Even yesterday on our program, to any discerning mind and any discerning eye, you could see that, there were strains, so to speak, so that when your colleague in Lagos spoke about a moral burden, the president of ASU was saying who precisely is carrying the burden. I mean, they are also interested in the students going back to school. And one of the first things you mentioned is the fact that you like a different strategy. It will mean a different strategy to what ASU has employed so far. They have been on a very prolonged strike. This is not the first one, though. They've had longer strikes before, but this is a strike that has been unprecedented, so to speak, and it's over the matter of their own allowances. Now the money has come out. For them, it's been hard fought, and they're saying, "Look, why are you, raising, issue with this?" They're saying, fight for your own rights as well. Would you say that you have been as aggressive as ASU has been in pushing for your rights in such a way that when government wants to consider, they should think that they should give you quite a bit more?
Well, like I said, we have a different strategy. We must not copy and paste, because ASU wants to go on strike and they do prolonged strikes. We must not do the same. I cannot speak on behalf of ASU, but I can speak on behalf of SANU. Our strategy is that we do more of engagements. We engage government. After waiting, this agreement was signed in 2009. This is about 11 years. And
so was ASU's agreement as well?
Well, I speak for my agreement. And that on the 20th of October 2020, which is about 3-4 months ago, government signed a memorandum of understanding with the two unions, SANU and NASU. And in that MOU, 2 weeks timeline was given to address problems that has arisen now that we are going on we have started this protest.
For bodies, for unions that are supposed to complement each other, when you know that without one, the other cannot work, you don't seem to be in tandem, so to speak. They have just gotten their funds. You haven't even embarked on any strike, but you are getting something anyway. Don't you think that is as a fallout of what ASU has fought for?
Let me correct the impression.
Yeah.
When you say their funds, I don't know how it becomes their funds. The Minister of Labour was very clear when he said that government is giving money to the university unions. He never mentioned that this money is for a union.
Yeah, but I mean, he was also quite clear on how the money was going to be distributed. No,
he never mentioned about the formula.
Maybe not on TV, but how did ASU come about, or how did the formula come about?
Now, I want to believe that happened outside the Ministry of Labour. I don't want to say where, but I can assure you that we met with the Minister of Labour, and except if what he told us was different from what happened, in his ministry, that money, 40 billion, was meant for the 4 university-based unions, and that he never gave any formula for sharing that money. And let me also make it very clear to you here that for us in SANU, because SANU is a melting pot, we have all sorts of professionals in this union. We have accountants, we have engineers, we have teachers who teach in the demonstration schools, we have administrators, we have engineers, we have medical doctors, we have nurses. Think of whatever profession you have in this planet Earth populated in our membership. And that therefore, we do not just sit down and then do things haphazardly. So when government met us on the 20th of October 2020, we signed an MOU, and in that MOU, there was a 2 weeks timeline that was given to address all the myriads of problems. one of which is the issue of these allowances. Outside that, we also have issues about the difficulties we have in accessing our salaries because we have mutilated salaries. Because at some point when we were the first to encourage members to accept the IPPIS because government did inform us that the idea of IPPIS was to fight corruption in the system. And because we are involved in the system, we know that certainly there was corruption going on, and we encouraged it. And they came and demonstrated to us that all the peculiarities that exist in the university system were captured, only to realize that it never is not so. And that people, still today, we have some of our members who have not received salaries in the last 3, 4, 5 months. So this is also something that antagonizes the relationship between the union and government, because if you work and you don't get paid, there are issues. Outside that, we also have issues with the state universities. Most of the states' governments decide to just go and establish universities without the corresponding funding. Our membership in the state universities are there languishing in poverty. Because in some universities owned by state governments, for about 10 months, some have not been paid salaries. So these are some of the problems. But, the issue is that people don't talk about all these other problems, but the 40 billion.
No, but that's not why you're protesting right now.
Yeah, that is why we're protesting.
It's
we
part
have
of the
7
reason.
issues.
Yeah.
7 issues. It is just one out of the 7 that you are mentioning.
Because
that is the 40 billion.
It's a major one. It's the one that has...
It's not major. We are not doing it in any scale of preference.
Is it not the one that has triggered...
It's not.
This
if
protest.
there is anything like that, I would have said even the areas of the national minimum wage, which government has promised us that it was going to be paid before the last day of the year. And up till 12 midnight of 31st of December, everybody was keeping vigil to wait because our civil servants in the MDS were all paid. Only members of staff in the tertiary institutions were the ones that have not been paid. So if there is anything that even touches us more, is the minimum wage areas, which have been denied us, and that we have been promised, and that we have been shown that government has approved it, and that it was only the payment that we were waiting for. And it never came to see the light of the day. And you knew also the reaction of the economic forces. Immediately, the minimum wage was increased. And our members also go to the same markets. So outside that, we also have issues about our members who have retired and could not access anything in form of pensions or their entitlements.
So just a quick one. Are you saying that, of the 7 that you have, if every other one is tackled, apart from this 40 billion, this sharing formula for this 40 billion, will this sensitization protest, will it stop?
Well, to protest is to drive home a point. And that is why I told you up initial that our strategy is different from others. We would have also given a strike notice and then go on strike. But because we feel for the nation, we also feel for the populace. In these universities, we have our children, we have our brothers, our sisters, and some of us are poor. We cannot afford to send our children abroad. Our children abroad to go and study. And that is why we must not, antagonize or be a cog in the wheel of, the development of our educational system. And whatever we can do, we will try to do to ensure that the system floats.
Let's go to Lagos now. Ayo has some questions for you.
Well, thank you, Malkwe. Well, comrade, the papers this morning are also indicating that after Thursday, after day 3, there will be a next line of action by your association, your union. What would that next line of action be?
Well, at the risk of preempting what the Jack National will do, I will tell you that we normally appraise situations. And in our calendar of events is that after the day 3 protest, we will assemble in Abuja here and then appraise the situations because we will get our reports from the branches. Well, the members of the 4th Estate of the Rim are doing very wonderful job because we can also see that everywhere in Nigeria is sensitized. And the major aim of our protest is to sensitize government. Tell them that, look, you have a problem. And your problem is that you are not honoring, agreements. And from agreements, we have moved to MOUs. And MOUs are becoming just a charade. You sit down, discuss, take tea, and then sign MOUs, and it never see the lights of the day. So after day 3, JAG will meet, we will appraise the situation, and we will let the world know our next line of action. But whenever you see the two unions, NASU and SANU, meet, any decision we take will be in the best interest of the system and also our membership.
Well, you also were quoted as saying that this protest is just a tip of the iceberg. Is a strike in the horizon?
Well, as you may have also known that in the labor laws, strikes are not an abnormal thing. We can also go on strikes. But whenever you see us go on strike, it's the last option. We don't jump at strikes. We are not strike trigger union. We go to strikes when it becomes inevitable. So I would not foreclose that if government does not listen, of which I don't want to believe, because engagements have already started, we will go on strike.
Now, in all of this, what would you say the role of the management of the universities have been at the various universities to the best of your knowledge? How well, if any at all, if any role at all, the universities themselves have, the management of the universities have, how much do you think they can influence anything in all of these?
Well, you know, the university is established through a statutes of law, and that there is a council, which is the highest policy-making body, then is stemmed to the management. Like I mentioned somewhere else, government is making this problem self-induced, because in the first place, these monies, if government is serious about peace and harmony and tranquility in the system, they shouldn't have given these monies in the name of unions. They should have given this because both members of staff who are members of ASU and SANU or NASU are staffers of the university. The first tranche that was given, government gave the allocation to the universities, and that it was given through the councils to the management. And the managements are pretended by the vice chancellors. And under the vice chancellor, you have the registrar, you have the bursar, who have the instruments of whoever that works in the university. For any member of staff that is employed, he has his appointment letter and terms and conditions of service, and that everybody knows the allowances that he or she deserves. So if these monies are given to the university councils or university managements, all this hula baloo will not be there, because the right thing will be done. But when you call out a union and say, I'm giving you this, and then when has union become an institution of governance? Unions are supposed to be pressure bodies where you sit down, aggregate ideas, lobby, and then persuade government to do certain things, and you take care of the welfare and well-being of your members. But government has no business giving monies to the unions. This is our position in SANU. Government should give these monies to the universities, and the universities are there, established by law, and every member of staff is supposed to be guided by the rules and regulation in the university. That is our position.
Well, it's interesting that you've brought this angle to the conversation, because I remember sometime in November last year, during your second national quadrennial delegates conference, that idea was dropped that the federal government was considering unifying the unions in the universities, ASU, SANU, NASU, under one union. Is that something, do you think that could solve the problem, so it's to one union and not to four?
If you are a good student of history, you would have known that ab initio, when the system started, there was only one union in the university system. So I will not be able to explain why the difference in the different unions. But for any progressive-minded person, I don't think anybody will be antagonistic to having a unified union for the university workers, where each and everyone's rights and privileges will be respected. But where you have issues is when your members or some section of the community is not treated, the way they are supposed to be treated. Part of the problems and grievances is also the usurpation of headship of non-teaching units in the university, which is also against the extant laws of establishment in the country. because you have a situation whereby some people abandon their primary assignments and taking over the jobs of others who are employed. I give you an example. You have, yes, the university runs a community system, but some of it, the best I can describe is crazy, where you have probably a professor of history, taking charge of a committee to distribute diesels, in diesel fuel in the university, or electricity distribution when you have a director of works with full complement of staff, from deputies to chiefs and so on. So these are some of the things we are saying. Or you have an academic staff taking charge of the distribution of hostels, allocating dormitories and giving out mattresses when he has abandoned his primary assignment. So these are some of the grievances we are saying and calling the attention of government that, look, you better call a spade, allow everybody to do his job. So once this is done and there's harmony, there's peace and tranquility, the system will flow. These are our colleagues. Some of them are our brothers, our sisters, our wives and husbands. So we have no problem, antagonizing anybody doing his job. But when you poach on my job, certainly I will not sit down and look at you. And that's why the unions are there.
Well, the examples you gave are quite telling, but people will ask if at the end of the day, there can be a way that, both of them will ever come together. I mean, I already asked that question. But moving forward, what has been the response of government to your demands? What exactly have you heard so far? Today will be day 2, but I'm sure that before now, you must have tried to get across to government officials to say, what is going on here? This is our grievance. This is our situation. How come we haven't heard anything, by now? And this is what we plan to do. What have you heard so far?
Well, officially, I wouldn't be able to say that we have had anything, but unofficially, I can also tell you that contacts are made and that we've been, approached by government, and that we hope and pray that before the end of the day 3, something positive will happen. Like I said earlier, that we are doing this not because we are happy doing it, but because we are forced to do it.
Are you still in support of IPIS, which has been a real bone of contention? Are you still in support of it? I
mentioned here that we were the first union to welcome IPIS.
Indeed, but I'm asking if you're still in support of it, considering how it's been implemented and how it hasn't favored you.
Well, with the current situation, nobody will tell you that is happy with IPIS. But I can also inform you that yesterday I visited IPIS office and I've seen some level of transformation in that place. But until and unless we see it, directly touching us, we will not be able to say. You know that before the change in the leadership of IPIS office, so many things have happened. It was in the public glare. But the new leadership in IPIS have promised, and we are hoping, because we have also started engaging them. You see, in our own union, we are not, quick at condemning things. When you see us talk about things, we must have done our jobs. And that is why I have visited the IPIS office and I have engaged them. I've told them where our problems are and that they have promised that some good things will be done. But until and unless that is done, we will not give them a pass mark.
So many things to discuss. We wish we could take you up on this issue of the coronavirus and how, prepared your members are to face it, considering the fact that the federal government is talking about resumption. But sadly, we have run out of time. Hopefully, we'll stay on the matter and see how follow up on, the outcome of your protest and your engagements with government on the demands that you have raised. But we have to thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. Comrade Mohammed Ibrahim is a national president, Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Universities. Thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you.
We'll take a break now. Sunrise Daily will be back. Please stay with us.
Well, the issues are not going to handle themselves. That is why we are humans. We are created to solve problems. And one that is literally facing the entire world and holding us all down is COVID-19. And it's a pandemic, one that's definitely crippled many, many economies all over the world. Are we getting to the end with the talk about the vaccines all over the place now? Well, to have this conversation, we have a lady and a gentleman with us, 2 medical practitioners. Dr. Tolu Olufunlayo is a consultant, public health physician. She is chairman, Association of Public Health Physicians of Nigeria. She is the chairman of the Lagos State chapter. She joins us virtually this morning. Thank you very much for joining us. And we'll also have with Malpa in Abuja, Dr. Akiala Ishaku. He's a virologist, public health epidemiologist. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. But let me begin with Dr. Olufunlayo. Well, we have crossed the 100,000 cases mark, and it definitely is something that will give anyone concern. But then it is at the same time where we have expedited a lot of conversations on vaccines. Yesterday, even this morning, a good number of the newspapers are looking at the solutions, the approaches to vaccines. Federal government has budgeted 5.8 billion naira for vaccine institutes. Meanwhile, we have a national vaccine production laboratory that hasn't worked in so many years. And all of this is going on, and the federal government is having conversations with the private sector. It's all a whole lot of conversations. Is there any hope in sight anytime soon?
Well, good morning, Ayo, and thank you for having me. Definitely, as you said, we are humans and we are created to solve problems. The issue is that we must have strategies that work. And from time to time, we must go back and review our strategies to see whether or not they're working. Now, this virus, as we have been saying over and over again, does not move by itself. It requires humans to move. And so one of the key areas for prevention and stopping this pandemic is actually the control of human behavior. And as we all know, that is one of the most difficult things to do. It's not just in Nigeria that we are having this problem of control, but in Nigeria, it's peculiar because our health and other systems have been so weak prior to the advent of the pandemic. And so this pandemic has just exposed the weakness of our health system. Also, you're right that we have crossed a sad landmark of 100,000 cases. But it's not all bad news in the sense that God so kind, we have been spared from having much higher cases. If you remember when the pandemic started, when we were in the first wave, the predictions from modeling showed that we were going to get to about 120,000 cases by the middle of the year. So thankfully, we are just getting to 100,000 cases. But on the other hand, these numbers are now becoming names, and they are names of people that we know about. So just one number for whoever knows that person is an issue. So yes, vaccines are important in, preventing a pandemic spread of an infectious disease, and we must look at how we can enhance our capacity, in terms of vaccines. But the truth of the matter is we really don't have everything that it takes right now to invent and manufacture the vaccine. It's not about just getting the vaccine together. That is being worked on in some of our institutions in Nigeria. But the greater issue is the production. It requires a very high level of capital and logistic resources that we yet have. I was very happy to hear on the news yesterday that Ekiti State, for example, was building up its cold room, logistics, ordering a high level number of freezers. And that's, a step in the right direction. These are the things that we should be doing at federal, state, and local government level. We must build our capacity, not just for coronavirus, but for all infectious and other diseases. We must strengthen our health system. Now, coming back to the end in sight for COVID-19, we cannot move away from the non-pharmaceutical interventions. We must emphasize them. We're not doing them enough. We need to emphasize physical distancing, wearing of face coverings when we're in public places, And of course, frequent hand washing or use of hand sanitizers, as well as cough etiquette. These are some of the most important things that we need to do to be able to curtail and mitigate this pandemic, and then begin to see a reversal in this upward trend of cases.
Well, Doctor, when you talk about human behavior, I think you're not the only one, because you also remember the PTF COVID-19 chairman also listed 4 factors responsible for the rise in cases. All of them human behavior related. Increase in local and international travels, business activities have resumed and increased, the Yuletide, religious activities, as well as the reopening of schools. And that is something that is giving a good number of people the goosebumps now. Even the Minister of Education has said there might be a need to review the resumption that has been proposed. If we are to control human behavior, that delicate balance of lives and livelihood is a really difficult one. What would you propose? Because it's going to be really difficult to control human behavior, especially when livelihood is concerned, particularly for a climate like our own.
Well, you're so right. It's a catch-22, really. And as you pointed out, in our own environment, with more than 2/3 of the population being daily earners, it's very difficult for us to start thinking of a second lockdown unless it is absolutely necessary. But you see, one of the things that most of my colleagues and I have been harping on from the beginning of the pandemic is that we need to embrace a do-with approach. We need to get the community, the grassroots, the individuals in their communities more involved. If they're more involved, then there'll be some level of a buy-in, at least by a higher proportion of the population, and we may begin to see some changes. The other thing, of course, is our risk communication. In the beginning of the pandemic, little was known about this virus because it is a novel virus. And so maybe we didn't quite get it right. The picture that was painted to Nigerians was of one that, didn't quite fit what we then saw in the beginning. And that made a lot of people think that, we were just telling tales. And this is the reason why you hear people saying that COVID-19 is just glorified malaria. Please, COVID-19 is not malaria. It is not malaria, and it does not have a treatment. That is the reason why we need to, as much as possible, prevent it from spreading. Because once it spreads, it just depends on, the individual and how it's going to manifest in the person's body. So the issue now is that we need to engage more. We need to work harder, not just at the top, at the management levels, but we need to go down to the people and let them embrace this message. Let them understand that we actually do have a problem with us. And then maybe we'll begin to see more changes. Now, some of the previous issues we had with infectious diseases and some immunizations, until we engaged with communities and got them heavily involved, it was difficult to see these changes. So this is where we really must, I think, put a lot of our effort at this point in time. Yes, we need the infrastructure, we need more testing, we need, more facilities, because right now our facilities are quite overstretched. I think, our capacity to support people who have critical cases of COVID now is stretched, but we also need to go to the grassroots to make sure that we prevent this thing by modifying human behavior. And that can only come when people buy in to what we are doing, to what we are saying, and actually accept the fact that COVID is an illness that needs to be stopped in its tracks.
Well, Dr. Ishaku, just before I hand you over to Mokwe, there is this issue that, Dr. Olufumlayo mentioned just now, and that is the fact that we need to strengthen our institutions, especially in terms of producing vaccines. you would remember that we have such a thing as the National Vaccine Production Laboratory that even before the 90s, that was supposed to be ahead of such a thing as this. An attempt was made in 1991 to revamp it, but never really saw the light of day. In 2017, there was an agreement between the federal government and a private organization for the production of vaccines. It was only November last year again that we heard that the Minister of Health signed an MOU with that particular organization for the production of vaccines. And you remember also that the WHO has told us that another pandemic is in the horizon. How soon, no one knows yet. But we are still struggling with this one at this time. Talking about getting ahead of anything, do you think we have that capacity? And do you think we have the wherewithal to take that on right now?
Thank you, Ayo, and compliment of the season. Thank you, viewers, for tuning in. As a country, I think we have the capacity to actually go into vaccine production. It's the political will that we need to have now as a backing. So there is a federal vaccine laboratory in Yaba that was established in 1925 by Rockefeller Laboratory. They started producing smallpox vaccines and then migrated to the production of yellow fever vaccine in 1930, 1952. Thereabout, Nigeria was certified by WHO through PAWOSU to actually produce vaccines, yellow fever vaccines for sub-Saharan Africa and West African countries. We lost it in 1991, and then, you know, a lot of our best brains have retired now. A lot of our mentors have retired now. Ayo, let me share this with you. I think I was on this station 5 months ago, and I listed some quite Nigerians that are doing very, very well in terms of vaccine development. The guy that is leading Pfizer, the guy that is leading Moderna vaccines for COVID-19, they are all Nigerians. So we have the capacity. We have a lot of vaccinologists in-house. Redeemer University, there through the African Center for Excellence, have actually modeled out a COVID-19 vaccine of the DNA model. And I think that all what they need now is support. So we have a lot of vaccinologists. We have a lot of classical virologists in-house that we need to actually harness these human resources and begin to bring them in. So not only to COVID, what happens to Lassa fever? So are we thinking of Lassa fever vaccine? Are we thinking of producing yellow fever vaccine in-house? Let me give you an example. India is doing classically well. In fact, India has been outsourced to produce COVID-19 vaccine through the AstraZeneca, the Oxford AstraZeneca. So virtually all the vaccines, the childhood preventable vaccines, are being produced in Africa, in India, I mean. If you go to most of our pharmaceutical stores, a lot of drugs are coming from India. So what I expect the federal government to do, yes, are buying into setting up vaccine institutes. That's a welcome idea. I buy into the, money, billions of nairas that have been voted out. But I think we need to also see to how we can be able to harness human resources. We need to also see to how we can also build capacity. In my thinking when I was driving in this morning, I was thinking that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, time has come for them to look at the Nigerian best brains across the globe. And can we have a presidential welcome back home to most of these guys? Let us see to how we can be able to tap into this, open a window for them and see how they can be able to contribute. Let me share something with you that will amaze you. I was privileged to do my postdoctorate degree in the Netherlands. And I ran into most of my laboratory assay in 6 labs that are into Lassa fever vaccine development. And I asked one of the principal investigators, we have Lassa fever in Africa. So why is it that you will not set up most of this lab in Africa? And he laughed. We have the vaccines here, we have the disease here, but how many research have we done in terms of Lassa fever vaccine development, in terms of yellow fever vaccine development? So you could see that we have the disease here, But the vaccines are not being produced here. They are produced in Europe and other parts of the world. So time has come now for us to look inward. And I think I begin to like the conversation around vaccine development in-house. It's quite key. And then we need to also strengthen our university system. Ayo, let me share this with you. Time has come now for our universities to become entrepreneurial in nature. We should move from a paradigm shift of producing graduates that are for the labor market. What are the universities doing? I have checked across the country. There is no any university that has a knowledge transfer office. There is none. If you go to Texas State University, universities across the US, they are declaring profits. Universities are supposed to declare profits, you know, in terms of patent knowledge transfer. So we need to move from the what is obtainable now and begin to make our universities entrepreneurial in nature. So that brings about changing curriculum. That brings about also seeing how we can be able to optimize and begin to move in time. We're in a 21st century that is a knowledge-based economy. And what we need to do as a country is about product and services delivery. So we need to typically move away from the narrative of being a typical university to we should be producing graduates that they don't care about the labor market, whether they need to work with government or not. They should set up their establishments of themselves and begin to set up companies. So that is the narrative that, so if I ask you, when last did you hear that University of Lagos produced something very novel, or the university I come from produced something novel?
I'm wondering, because right now we're seeing on the front pages of papers, federal government budgets $5.8 billion for vaccine institutes. You have a number of subliners there, why we can't develop vaccine, and so on and so forth, and how, you know, even people are wondering, this vaccine that the authorities say we're going to get, Nigerians are going to be vaccinated, hopefully in the first quarter of this year. A number of them should be vaccinated. People are saying the vaccine is scarce, and the ones that are up for production have already been bought beforehand. There are questions around that, which I'll have you answer in a moment. But I want to believe that, you know, there's also focus on the virus itself. This second wave was foretold.
Absolutely.
You know, even though, yes, we went back to our nonchalant ways after the lockdown. For a lot of people, after the lockdown, we felt the virus was over. But a lot of people warned about a second wave that could come upon us. Do we understand the nature of this virus today?
As a country, I can say that we have a minimal understanding of the nature. This is because I have gone through a lot of lexicon to check out publications, from Nigeria. I see quite limited. This is because a lot of professors, a lot of university lecturers are on strike. These are people that are supposed to, go...
Oh, they've called off the strike now, but they're not back at work yet.
Of course, they are not back at work. So we have not actually really understand the nature of the virus in-depthly. All what we know is that we are the first country to sequence this COVID-19 virus in Africa. Yes, we are also able to push to identify the variants of this virus that has mutated.
Yes. So are we sure that, is it the mutated virus that is now with us, or is it still the one from the first wave? Do we have an idea of the strain with us?
Actually, that's what I'm saying. So we have not actually really understand. So we need bioinformaticians to actually catalog that. We need public health modelers to actually catalog that, to actually also see which of the variants is in circulation in the country. We've not done that. So it has, we need a multidisciplinary approach to this. We need health economics to tell us whether we are spending more or we are spending less. We need to also go in depth into epidemiology to really actually understand. Dr. Tolu made quite a valid submission in a background. So we need to actually understand what is wrong with the change in human behavior. Is it attributed to socio-economic status of individual? Is it that we've not done well in risk communication and advocacy? So we need to do more. Let me share this with you. 10 to 11 months into this, we have very poor surveillance system at the grassroots. I was here some months ago and I said, we would have quickly set up a COP health marshal at the villages where people can be able to identify this, People can be, the corps marshals can be able to become health educators, be able to report. We've not done it. And when the second...
Largely because the local governments are not working.
Absolutely. The local government structure, we are talking about vaccine. I was happy when you engaged some of my mentors, Dr. Simon Agwale and Professor Audu last week. But you are talking about storage of -70. Where can you get that in our local government level? Our local government chairman keying into this to set up cold chain system on vaccine storage to strengthen our healthcare system. You see a local government chairman without a face mask, attending public gatherings. These are supposed to be policymakers. So actually there is no buying into this. And I think we need to do more. I got across 10 doctors. I casually asked them yesterday whether if the COVID-19 is available, they would take. They told me no.
The vaccine?
The vaccine. Even among the healthcare workers, there's no buying. So we need to do a lot of advocacy. We need to do a lot of, we need to really talk to people to really understand.
I'm going to ask you to hold your thoughts. When we come back from the break, I'm going to be asking you if, given all that you know about the COVID-19 virus, I mean the virus itself, the coronavirus, wondering if you've seen sufficient coordination from the PTF in passing across the message that Nigerians should be getting. But that will be in a moment. Please stay with us. Dr. Akiara Ishako is a virologist and a public health epidemiologist, and he's with us in our Abuja studios. Just before we went on break, I did say that when we come back, I was going to ask you that given all that you know about this virus, how it's mutating and how it easily spreads, because there are also questions as to whether this mutated virus, if that is what is with us, is it spread faster than, say, the strain we saw in the first wave. And all of this are all hypothetical here in Nigeria because we do not have confirmation of the type of virus that we have. Nonetheless, given all that you know about the behavior of this virus, maybe studying from what you have seen elsewhere, would you say that the PTF has its eyes on the ball with coordination efforts from the federal and among the states with the steps that it has taken and recommended so far?
So, Mwakwe, I want to give it to the Presidential Task Force. Excellent coordination in terms of policy, in terms of daily briefings. But where I have some kind of concerns are state governors have not buy-in into this. So you have policies from the PTF, and then when it comes to state level and local government level, it's been watered down. So we have classical policies on papers, but when it comes to implementation and enforcement, and I think...
Well, some people argue differently. They say some states that have felt the burden have taken steps. Give you instance, Kaduna, Ekiti.
And Lagos.
And Lagos.
So you can count, Malcolm, you count 3, 4 out of 36.
That we know, I mean, they're in the news. Maybe that's why.
Malcolm, I hope you know that the presidential PTF, state's supposed to model that. We're supposed to have state PTF, like a state task force, that's supposed to educate people daily. We also need to have local government PTF, that's supposed to, like a PTF model, that's supposed to, educate people daily. But do you see that in states? Do you see that? Lagos State just went and shut down nightclubs because actually night activities drive this virus. And they did a lot of things, charge people to court. Do you see that in other states? Except Kaduna State that does enforce. So enforcement in states is a bit poor. You see people walking without face masks. You see people, even policymakers, even governors attending burials, attending funeral services, attending weddings. And you begin to ask yourself, are these people that are saying that there should be no mass gathering attending? So you see that. So classical coordination at the top, but at the bottom, there is a kind of a weak implementation of these policies. Could you imagine, Mark, where as a presidential task force, we could not even coordinate people coming into the country to take their test. I was in this station, some months ago. I said, let us open a window for private sectors. Let us have an in-house testing panel in our airports. It does not take rocket science. You can have a gene expert that can analyze within 30 minutes to 1 hour, 20 samples at a time. If you have 10 of them, that's a flight, 200 samples. So somebody comes in, hey, can you just have 2 hours delay? We need to test you. And then you test it. So it's not a rocket science. If you cannot do that as a government, you open a window for private individuals. So policy implementation of these protocols is quite poor. I come from the university system. Our sick bays are nothing to write home about. Our healthcare system, health centers in our universities are not. Our hostels, you are talking of overcrowding your house. Our lecture theater, I take a class of about 600 students.
So you feel it.
I feel it.
In terms of this resumption date, you are smack right in the middle of it. You're aware of the danger of this virus, and you're also seeing the difficulty. I mean, I'm sure you understand that there is heavy thoughts on, weighing the education of children who have been at home for an extended period of time vis-a-vis reopening schools in the wake of a second wave. Where do you stand on that quickly?
So I stand in, let us reopen. These are my reasons. The same people we are asking them not to come to school, they go to the market, they go to mosques, they go to churches, they go to nightclubs that will open. They mingle. They are part of NSAS movement. They meet. Now, we should open up.
But within that, some people argue but that's within their age bracket.
Absolutely.
And they seem to have some resistance within that age bracket.
But the second variant.
But they could pose a threat to their lecturers and
absolutely.
The
second variant affects 70% population. The transmissible dynamics is 70% among the young people. That is the second variant. But the issue is that let us reopen, but with strict adherence to safety protocols.
Do you think we can keep those?
So that brings to bear that how can a university system not be able to adhere to simple adherence protocol? So Mark, let me take you into this.
Before you do, let me quickly flip back to Ayo in Lagos, because I'm sure he has to get over to our guest on Zoom. Ayo.
Yeah, most certainly, Mark. Dr. Olufunlayo is still with us, Dr. Tolu Olufunlayo. There was a question you asked Dr. Ishaku that I think would be something also for her. She's also referenced it. Doctor, you referenced the fact that we need to interact with the locals a lot more. And you also heard Dr. Ishaku talk about the fact that we need to have the information mechanism or communication mechanisms to trickle down from the states to the local levels, to the ward levels, and all of that. You have talked about the need for us to engage people, to get them to get the buy-in that is necessary to get this done. But without appropriate communication, you know how difficult it has been, just as you have said earlier, to rein people in, so to speak. Now, we're talking about a second variant. And as you said, we are yet to really understand what the issue is with the first variant. And now we have a second variant, and it seems to be evolving on its own. And as Dr. Ishaku said, among a young population. And now we're talking about reopening of schools. First of all, on the reopening of schools, where do you stand?
Okay, thank you for your question. I'm going to try to unpack this because it's loaded. You see,
I want you to
talking about this.
Let's take it one after the other, okay? Let's begin. First of all, where do you stand on the reopening of schools? Then we take the others in their bits.
Okay. Schools would need to reopen, but I think we have to, first of all, take a look at how well we can handle the reopening. One of the major problems with universities, of course, I am in the university system and I have been there for a long time, so I understand the problems. One of the major ones is overpopulation. So it is very difficult for you to practice physical distancing, especially within the classrooms and within the hostels. Of course, you know that people are coming from different parts of the country to come to school. So it's not like the primary or secondary education system, especially the primary, where people are coming just from one locality. They're going to be together for a long period of time. We don't have wash facilities working well in most of our universities. That is another major problem. So when you talk about hand washing, it's going to be a challenge. And then how are students going to be buying hand sanitizers that are so expensive the way they're supposed to buy them? So the universities, and this is, coming to the issue of university revitalization. And again, it is a symptom of the weak systems that we have. The education system has been very weak, and this is also exposing those weaknesses. However, I must tell you that for the tertiary resumption, some universities, have put on their thinking caps. They're trying to see what they can do. Some universities, for example, the University of Lagos, where I work, we are already looking at using virtual modes of teaching. I do not know exactly how it's going to be deployed, but we are being trained as we speak, or retrained, because we have been trained in the past, on the use of the LMS, the learning system. So these are things we need to move to the new normal of education, which is going to be a hybrid model. I can't see us coming back to being fully physical for various reasons, even because of the overpopulation of our universities. We definitely need to employ some virtual teaching methods in addition to the physical ones. Now, because I'm in medicine, there's some aspects of medicine you cannot teach virtually. Medicine is a bedside specialty. It's a bedside, thing. So we must have some of the physical, but I know that at least in the beginning, we're looking at how we can deploy it. So I think the universities will need some time to be able to decipher how best to reopen safely. I also heard in the report that, some universities are looking at a phased resumption. And I think that's very important. Because if you do that, then you won't have everybody coming in at once. That's one. Secondly, if you now find out that the resumption is causing spikes in cases amongst either the student or the staff population, then something can quickly be done before everybody is exposed. And I will recommend that to every level of education. When we do eventually decide to resume, we need to do it in a phased manner. Because people say, when we resumed in September and October, that is the primary and secondary levels, we didn't see the spike of cases that we thought we would see. But now we have higher numbers of cases, and I suspect that we have much higher levels of community transmission, even though we don't have all the data to be able to pinpoint. So it's important for us to go back gradually so that if there are any spikes, we can quickly withdraw. And this brings me to the issue of data-driven decision-making. The association I belong to, that I chair, the Association of Public Health Physicians of Nigeria, is very concerned about the data that we have for COVID-19. We need to have more data, and the various stakeholders need to be able to come together to look at this data in aggregation so that we can make data-driven decisions. For example, knowing exactly what is fueling this second wave, second spike in cases, we are looking at some of the data as an association to see whether we can find areas that would be easiest to, areas where we can easily put in interventions, I would say. So not just blanket because, it was Christmas and it was this time and, schools resumed. We want to actually try and pinpoint some of these things. So it's important that all stakeholders can actually rub minds and bring their data together so that, we can make informed decisions and be able to nip this pandemic in the bud as soon as possible.
Very quickly, still on education, but this time on educating the populace that you talked about, percolating the information about COVID-19 to the people as much as possible. while we are contending with COVID-19, we are still, we still have Lassa fever in view. Just this morning, a paper reported that 10 people have died as a result of cholera in Benue State, and a good number of people have been hospitalized. All of that we are contending with at the same time, giving information out to people. What have we missed, and what should we quickly address so the figures do not continue to rise the way they are rising, and giving everyone, especially the health workers and the authorities, serious concern?
Yes, thank you. And I'm glad you mentioned the fact that there are other communicable diseases that are killing Nigerians and affecting us adversely. The important thing is for us to, be able to have the buy-in of the community by using trusted persons to reach them. And as most of us know, there's a lot of distrust and mistrust between the government and the populace for various reasons. So the government needs to make use of leverage on those trusted people in the community. We have structures set up. We have the community development associations. We have the traditional rulers. We have, several systems there. We have respected persons in the community. Of course, we have some of our, important personalities, people in the media, people in entertainment also coming out to talk about COVID-19. But we need a stronger message, and we need to take it really down to the grassroots and engage them, not just talk to them and tell them what it is, but actually engage and understand their thought pattern, and where we may have missed it in the past. We need to be able to tell them, look, we thought it was this way, but now this is the way we are seeing it, and give them the actual picture. So our risk communication must change. It must become more people-centered and more people-driven. When we do that, unfortunately, it might take time. But, a journey of 1,000 kilometers begins with a step. If we start today, we are going to be getting closer towards getting our people mobilized, and then getting them to accept that there is something they need to do. They need to take responsibility for protecting themselves and other people in this pandemic.
Oh, Dr. Ishaku is still with us. I'm sure you wanted to respond to a few things that she raised there. She talked about how, the students might find it a little difficult to cope with some of the demands that will be required for returning to school. And I heard you say something here in Abuja. You already did say that the universities will have to be entrepreneurial in their thinking if the students are going to come back to school. Do you want to quickly respond to that?
Yeah. So, Malkwe, assuming that I'm a vice chancellor of a university, and I want to reopen. So I want to appreciate Dr. Tolu's position on the face-to-face reopening is quite key. So if I have 40,000 students in the university, I can be able to raise 2 billion naira for you. Now, let's say you are going to resume in phases, but this is the portal. You will pay in 5,000 naira. I'm just assuming you will pay 5,000 naira. We will run COVID-19 test for you on arrival. We will run your blood group. We will run maybe your genotype. We'll sell products to you.
Is that going to be done within the university?
It can be done within the university, the health center. So you have it in phases. And then multiply 5,000 by 40,000 students.
And you will not, that the unions will not complain that you're increasing their burden without commensurate
absolutely, you need to protect
remuneration.
You need to protect the health well-being of the system, of the university, of the students. 5,000 naira, when you go to our university centers, there are no medical records for students. So if you do that, you create a medical record, right? You have 2 billion naira. Multiply 5,000 naira by 40,000 students. You have 2 billion naira. You can set up, increase hospital beds, have a section of the hostel dedicated as an isolation center. Should in case people that are positive, they will go in there. Mandate chemistry department of the university to produce hand sanitizers. You can talk in with them. Mandate entrepreneurship, unit or department of the university to produce customized face masks. You can mandate petrochemical department of the university to produce hand washing bowls. You can mandate mass communication department to go into advocacy, come up with innovative ideas that can be able to drive this process. They understand the system.
So there is a role for everybody. The question is, that's at the university level. But oftentimes when they talk about resumption, they're talking about, in general. You have the children in primary schools. You also have secondary schools as well. Absolutely. What's going to happen there?
Absolutely. So you can design models to accommodate that. I have kids in school, and I went to the PTA meeting, and I told them, we are going to pay for COVID-19 tests. If you use a rapid diagnostic kit, which I think the government said they will roll out, which is quite key.
Well, I do hope that members of the PTF are listening and watching this morning, and Nigerians who will be in position of authority to make certain policy decisions on this matter. I hope that they have been able to take something away from the conversation we've had this morning. We have to thank you very much for coming on Sunrise Daily. Dr. Akiala Ishako is a virologist, a public health epidemiologist. We also had with us on Zoom from Lagos, Dr. Tolu Olufunlayo, who is a consultant public health physician. We thank all our guests for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning and sharing their very candid thoughts with us. Thank you so much. Well, that's it for Sunrise Daily this morning, but not before, we will definitely not leave before we take your mails. We have quite a number of them. Ayo, take it away.
Yes, let's begin with, of course, let me put this ahead, Mark, where, we had that conversation yesterday about electricity, and you promised that we needed to take on some of those messages from yesterday. So we'll take some of those messages from yesterday as we take on some today. Let's begin with this one by Musa Muhammad, talking about curbing COVID-19. The truth is that the federal government is not helping in curbing COVID-19. Where do I start? In registration, opening of schools when there is a spike, churches, mosques, markets. I could go on.
Well, thankfully, my producer listens. I didn't even have to put pressure on her. Just talking about corruption concern, task force on COVID-19. We must praise the federal government COVID-19 task force. They're doing a great job. Nigerian population is double that of UK. We are afraid of what is going on now in the UK. Nigerians are ignoring the protocols. I'm sure this is Nigerian living in the UK, looking on what is going on in Nigeria and showing some concern. This is from Corrupt Concern.
Most certainly. And still on schools resumption, this one is from Farouk Mutana, who says students should be allowed to resume schools while the enforcement of COVID-19 protocols continue. We cannot keep the students at home for so long because it poses a calamitous threat to the society in terms of societal crimes like rape, internet fraud, insecurities, and others.
Kinemi Patrick, talking about Nigeria's university system, says government did not prepare our university system for the challenge of our growing population ab initio. There is a need to bridge the disconnect between the university system and the private sector for the ultimate development of the nation. I think that goes without saying.
About funding public university by Dr. Ohumwavi says government needs a new funding structure for Nigeria's public university system. We cannot continue like this. Maybe they want to take Dr. Ishaku's advice. What do you think?
Well, Habib Bello, also talking about that, university autonomy, says there is a university autonomy legislation. Why is the university system not self-funding? Is it a society, cultural phenomenon, or a policy issue? Big question there.
Jeremy says it's a shame that in 2020, federal universities are grappling with opening schools via a virtual platform under the prevailing circumstances. Many of these universities have IT departments. It's a shame. Oh, wow.
That's it. Well, I guess the IT departments have their challenges cut out for them. A World Man 101 is saying, talking about power supply, And this is from the East. Says, at Enugu Disco, please restore proper power supply to our area. And he names it First Market, Ifite, Oka on the left side. Others have had light for days now. We have a prepaid meter, I want to believe that is it, that is subscribed to on a weekly basis. So Enugu Disco, we hope you will respond to him on Twitter, tell him why that side, the left side, has not had light.
Is that assuming that the right side has light? Anyway, Folari Bakari says, I think the discos, and of course, you know, we promised that we will be bringing you tweets from yesterday. I think the discos prefer the estimated billing. My bill went up from 30,000 naira to 100,000 naira in a month without any explanation. If you don't pay, they will disconnect you. If I am metered, well, it continues, I guess.
Well, Larry Bakari has to take his case to NERC, you know, and see how he can get some redress there. But let's take a look at this last one from Ugu Jude, talking about prepaid meters. It says, the sincerity of government metering Nigerians is questionable. I think related bodies are benefiting from post-paid billing. If the meters are not made available, bills should be pegged to avoid ongoing massive exploitation. That's from Ugu Jude.
And, you know, it's part of what, I think it was Victor Orwell that also said that in a tweet yesterday, that it's the law that if you have paid for a meter and you have not been metered, the discos have no right to bill you. Well, again, when that issue came up, we asked the secretary of the ANED that came, our guest yesterday, and he was saying that matter should be taken up with NERC. And again, don't forget that we have made several efforts to get across to NERC to come and speak on this matter because it is very, very thorny and a good number of people are not concerned in a bit. They are very, very concerned. So we're waiting to hear from the NERC so that it can clear the air on this issue and several others around it. Well, that's Sunrise Daily today. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Well, my producer, just know that I love you. Thank you so much for watching. We will always, always put you first. We want to hear from you as much as possible. So please do send your mails and tweets. Keep them coming in. Thank you for watching. I'm Maukwe Ogun Yusuf.